Trigonometric functions of any angle. Examples. Example 1. Find theta such that theta is between 0 to 360 degrees and round your final answers to nearest degree. So for the first one, we are given sine theta equals 0.8723. So for these questions, as we mentioned earlier, we will start with finding alpha first. Alpha here, and actually let's sketch this first. A, S, T, C. We have sine theta positive, so that will happen here in first quadrant and in the second quadrant. So alpha here will be sine inverse 0.8723. So we get alpha to be sine inverse. So sine inverse in your calculators 0.8723 should give us 60.7 degrees. Rounding that to nearest degree will be 61 degrees. So we will get 61 degrees. Now because it's in the first quadrant, theta and alpha are same. So theta equals alpha, which will be 61 degrees. So theta 1 we can say alpha. Theta 2 here now will be 180 degrees. Subtract alpha. So it will be 180 minus 61 degrees. 180 minus 61 will be 119 degrees. So our one answer will be 61, second answer will be 119 degrees. For the second one here again, we will sketch first. So when we sketch, we are given secant theta negative, meaning that cos theta negative, and cos is negative in the second quadrant and in the third quadrant. So alpha here, before we find alpha, we will write cos theta equals negative 1 over 7.83. Because alpha is always between 0 to 90 degrees, we will say alpha equals cos inverse absolute value. So positive 1 over 7.83. We will get alpha equals, so in our calculators we punch in cos inverse bracket 1 divided by 7.83. We get 82.66. 82.66 as the nearest degree will be 83 degrees. Now theta 1 in the second quadrant will be 180 minus alpha. Theta 2 in the third quadrant will be 180 plus alpha. So in our case we will do 180 minus 83. So that will give us 97 degrees, and 180 plus 83 we will get 263 degrees. Okay. For this one then, if you were to sketch this, all S T C or CAST, tan theta negative, so tan is positive here and here, meaning negative in this quadrant and this quadrant, and sine theta less than 0. Here sine theta is more than 0, so that's not truth, so it's only fourth quadrant. So again we will follow same procedure. We will find alpha first. We will say it is tan inverse 0.842. We take positive value when we find inverse because we take absolute values. So tan inverse 0.842 will give us 40.09 degrees. So roughly 40 degrees. Now because we are in the fourth quadrant, theta is 360 minus alpha. In our case 360 minus 40 degrees, we will get 320 degrees. For this one then again we will sketch first. So we have all S, T and C. And sine negative, so sine is positive in first and second quadrant, so it's in the third or fourth quadrant. And cot theta less than 0. Cot theta less than 0 meaning tan negative. So tan is positive here, so only negative in this quadrant. So we'll hit quadrant 4 again. So alpha here will be sine inverse positive 0.921. We get alpha equals, because we use absolute value, we take positive only. We get 67.07. So we will say 67 degrees. Theta here then is 360 minus alpha. In our case 360 minus this, we get 293 degrees. Okay. Once we have 293 degrees, that's the answer we have, only one in the fourth quadrant. Let's look at this one. We have cot theta equals negative 5.783. Negative 5.736 actually. Negative 5.736. So let's plot this again. We have cot theta, which is so all STC. Cot is reciprocal of tan, negative, so that's in this quadrant and this quadrant. And cosecant greater than 0. Cosecant greater than 0 means sine positive. That means that happens in the second quadrant. So in order for us to find alpha first, we will write tan theta equals reciprocal of this, so this number. Then we will say alpha equals tan inverse. We always take positive when we find alpha, so 1 divided by 5.736. So it will be tan inverse 1 divided by 5.736. We get 9.889. So that's roughly 10 degrees. So alpha here is 10 degrees. Because we are in the second quadrant, theta will be 180 minus alpha. 180 minus 10 degrees will end up giving us 170 degrees. Okay. Let's see some more examples. Let's say we are given cos theta equals 0.422, tan theta is less than 0, and theta is between 0 to 360 degrees. We are asked to find sine theta. In order for us to find sine theta, first we'll need to find theta. How? Like previous examples, we will sketch this first. We are given cos theta to be positive, so that's in this quadrant and this quadrant, and tan less than 0, so that's in the quadrant 4th again. And now in order for us to find alpha, we will say cos inverse 0.422, so we will say alpha equals cos inverse 0.422. we get 65 point. Because this is final answer to 3 degrees, 3 decimal places, we'll keep few decimals here. So I'm going to say 65.039 degrees. Now because we are in the fourth quadrant, theta will be then 360 minus alpha. So in our case, 360 minus this number, which will end up giving us 294.961 degrees. Now that we have theta, we can find sine theta. So we will say sine theta equals sine of the angle we found, in our case 294.961 degrees. So let's punch this in calculator, see what we get. Sine theta equals, punching this in calculator, we should get negative 0.9065, so 907 here. Now we are given tan to be negative and cos to be positive, so we do expect in the fourth quadrant sine to be negative, so that is what we get. Let's look at one more. We are given cot theta equals 8.273, sine theta is less than 0, and we are asked to find cosecant theta. So like previous one, let's start with sketching this. A, S, T, C. Cot positive, meaning that tan positive, so in quadrant 3 and quadrant 1, and sine less than 0, so that does not happen, it's only in the third quadrant. And now we are given cot theta, so we will first write tan theta is reciprocal of cot, so 1 over 8.273, so then alpha will be tan inverse 1 over 8.273. Notice we don't find theta directly because we find alpha first, because alpha is always acute angle between 0 to 90 degrees. So we find alpha, and then depending on the quadrant, we'll connect alpha and theta together. So punching this in calculator, we punch in tan inverse bracket 1 divided by 8.273, we get 6.892. So it is roughly 6.892 degrees. Okay. Once we have this, we can find theta in the third quadrant to be 180 plus alpha. So in our case, it will be 186.892 degrees. Now that we have theta, we can find cosecant theta. So we will say cosecant theta equals 1 over sine theta. So in our case, it will be 1 over sine 186.892. So we punch in calculator 1 divided by sine 186.892. We get negative 8.9 we get negative 8.33334. So we will say 8.333 to rounding to 3 decimal places. So given particular ratio, if you want to find another ratio between 0 to 360 degree, if the angle is with conditions given, the procedure will be like this. We sketch, we decide which quadrants, we find reference angle alpha. Depending on the quadrant, we do 180 minus alpha in the second quadrant, 180 plus alpha in the third quadrant, and 360 minus alpha in the fourth quadrant. Once we have our angle, we can find any of the other remaining 5 trigonometric ratios.